What is up, Ewu crew? Today, we're covering 5 cold cases solved decades later. For the friends and family members of someone who is murdered, the pain and despair of watching their loved one's case go cold is second only to the pain of losing that person. As years pass and the killer walks free, the frustration and sadness only compounds. Some police departments put together teams to solve cold cases. Many simply have a stack of cold case files that detectives can volunteer to work during unpaid overtime. Cases that do not get continued media coverage often fall by the wayside. If a family doesn't have the resources to keep the case in the news, or the detectives do not have the resources to keep working the case indefinitely, especially when there are no new leads, a case could go unsolved indefinitely. In this video, we're not going to talk about cases that remain unsolved. Instead, we're going to talk about 5 cold cases that finally, after years of diligent work by family members, detectives, and amateur sleuths, were solved. Number 5. Tanya Etheridge McKinley. In the first few hours of the year 1985, Tanya Etheridge McKinley, a mother of a young son, was murdered. According to those interviewed about her activities prior to her death, she had been drinking at a local bar and grill in Pensacola, celebrating the new year. Around 1:30 in the morning, after the drinking, singing, and celebrating died down, she left the bar and was never seen alive again. Before the sun rose on New Year's Day, her body was discovered in an empty lot. She had been assaulted, strangled, and left half-clothed. Police arrived quickly, collecting hair, bodily fluids, and a single cigarette butt from the scene. But in 1985, there was no technology for analyzing the DNA contained in that evidence, and there certainly were no databases to compare those results against. Instead, the cops were left with some scattered eyewitness accounts of Tanya at the bar. They said she hadn't left with anyone. No one reported seeing her after she left the bar. There were few leads to follow, even without reliable eyewitnesses, as there always are. They believed that the person who assaulted and murdered Tanya had likely done it before, so they called in the usual suspects. None of them were good for it. Though the leads dried up, the Pensacola Police Department did not give up on Tanya. Over the last 35 years, they would occasionally get a new lead, and they would run it down until it was clear it was a dead end. As the original team of detectives retired, they passed the case on to a new team. When that team retired, they passed it down again. It was the capture of the Golden State Killer, also known as the original Night Stalker, and by the acronym EARONS, that breathed new life into this case. GSK was caught because one of his family members submitted their DNA for lineage analysis. Those results are stored in a huge database, and on occasion can be subpoenaed by police departments for comparison to DNA obtained from crime scenes. Some databases are entirely open-sourced and can be accessed without a warrant. The detectives are not looking specifically for the perpetrator of a crime, but for family members of that person. If they can make a familial match, they can find the criminal. This is exactly what happened in Tanya's case. It had been years since the evidence gathered at her crime scene had been tested for DNA. There was enough DNA recovered from the cigarette butt that police could compare it to other samples and potentially make a match. When the detectives partnered with Parabon Nanolabs and ran the DNA from this case through their genealogy database, the records of several distant relations were returned. That was enough for the police to find the man who murdered Tanya Etheridge McKinley. His name was Daniel Leonard Wells. Over the last 35 years, he had been picked up on a few charges, assault, solicitation, but had never served any substantial time. He had walked free for decades. But justice was finally served, and Tanya would be able to rest in peace. In a statement posted on Facebook after Wells was arrested, Chuck Mallett, the Pensacola Police Department captain, said, "This was a case that spanned 3 generations of detectives. I know it took a long time, but it was one of those cases we never gave up on." Number 4. Lorraine Snell. Lorraine Snell was only 19 years old when she was murdered. On the 25th of September, 1980, she left her home in Brooklyn, New York, and headed towards a catering hall. She was planning a party for her boyfriend and wanted to rent the space. She met the husband of her cousin there, who helped her reserve it. The next day, she was found strangled in the trunk of a station wagon, parked in front of a grocery store. Suspicion fell almost immediately on her cousin's husband, a man named James Burris. His alibi, however, was that he was committing another crime at the time. He told police that he had been robbing a taxi stand and couldn't possibly have killed Lorraine. When they examined him, looking for scratches or bruises that would have indicated a struggle, they reported that they didn't find any. The robbery earned him a prison sentence, and it was in prison that he turned to religion. Upon his release, he became a street preacher. Many knew him only as Bishop. Even though the station wagon was found in the parking lot of Burris's former employer, and the station wagon was once owned by Burris's boss, the police claimed there was not enough evidence to charge him with the crime. Until March of this year. It was the scrapings from underneath Lorraine's fingernails that finally clinched this case. DNA recovered from her fingernails was conclusively matched to James Burris, nearly 40 years after this horrific murder. Number 3. Naomi Sanders. Our third solved cold case is Naomi Sanders. The winter of 1973 was particularly cold for some parts of the United States, but not for Naomi, who lived in temperate San Francisco. She was having steak for dinner. Her window was open. A sign propped in between the window and the sill read "Open." She managed the apartment building and would often show potential renters around the property, no matter the time of day or night. She had a purebred poodle she had named Cindy. The police guessed, because she was making 2 steaks, that one of the steaks was for Cindy. Sometime on the evening of February 27, 1973, Naomi met her death. Like the other cases on our list, she was strangled, left lying on her bed. From the beginning, police knew this would be a difficult case. While the majority of murdered women are murdered by someone they know, Naomi didn't have any vindictive ex-boyfriends. As far as they could tell, she didn't have any enemies at all. In discussion with her friends and family, no one reported that Naomi had told them about any suspicious men. The police collected stains from her bed, but at the time, there was nothing that could be done with that evidence. With no leads, the case went cold almost immediately. In 2014, detectives at the Vallejo Police Department extracted DNA from the available evidence. But when they ran the profile through the official databases, no matches were found. Over the next few years, they would continue to run the DNA as new banks opened up, even expanding their reach beyond California. Every test came back negative. That was, until 2019, when Parabon Nanolabs ran the DNA through their collection of open-source databases and got 2 matches. Detectives were able to eliminate one of the leads right away. The other, however, was dead. He'd asked for his body to be cremated, perhaps to make it impossible for DNA analysis to ever conclusively link him to a crime. However, part of the report provided about these matches indicated that the second lead had a son. Police reached out to him, and he willingly gave his DNA. It was from that DNA that they determined that Robert Dale Edwards, the second lead, was Naomi's murderer. He'd had a string of assaults, thefts, and domestic violence charges before he finally overdosed and died in 1993. Number 2. Christy Witcher. Christy Witcher had just turned 24. On the 30th of July, 1993, she left her trailer in Scottsville, Kentucky, and disappeared. Her sister said she was headed to her job at a nearby carnival, though she never arrived. At first, Christy's family wasn't that worried. Her sister reported that sometimes she would just leave. She said, "My sister was always a wanderer. She would go and she would stay gone for a couple weeks, but she'd always come back. But this time, she never came back." For years, her family waited with bated breath, hoping that their daughter would return safe and sound. It was difficult to believe that she would disappear of her own volition, but that was preferable to believing that she was dead. It was due to that hope that she would just show up again that they did not report her missing until the next year. They would have to hold on to those hopes for more than 25 years. In the summer of 1995, a pair of hunters walking through a patch of woods in Pulaski County, Kentucky, discovered a dead body. The coroner discovered that the body was that of a young woman, her throat cut, her body beaten before she died. For months, the pieces of this body lay unidentified in a morgue. Eventually, the case was submitted to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. It wasn't until 2020 that DNA taken from this body was matched with that of Christy's living relatives, and they discovered that this identified person was their missing daughter and sister. Unfortunately, though the police were pleased to be able to hand over Christy's remains to her family, they still have no idea what really happened to her. The wounds inflicted indicate homicide, but there was no physical evidence, and the family could not provide any leads. Number 1. Mark Ashland. The last case on our list is that of Mark Ashland. In October of 1984, the body of a 30-year-old man was found hanging in Carkeek Park near Seattle. He had no identification, and despite their best efforts, without a shred of evidence pointing towards who this man was, detectives labeled him John Doe, and his case was shelved. Hopefully, they thought, someone would come forward. Somewhere out there, someone had to be looking for this man. He was young. He seemed healthy. Someone must know who he was. They took his fingerprints and ran them through their database. As databases expanded, they continued to run them, hoping for a hit. Every few years, they would cycle the prints through every available database. They had no luck. For over 35 years, no one came forward to claim him. When the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System was established, a sketch of the man and a general profile were added. It wouldn't be until 2019 that someone reached out to the medical examiner's office in King County. They had seen the profile on NAMUS and believed this John Doe was her uncle, Mark Ashland, who had disappeared in 1981. Both the medical examiner's office and the family wanted to be sure. DNA would not be an option this time. Mark had been buried 35 years prior, and no samples of blood, skin, or even hair had been taken before his burial. Remember, this was 1984, long before anyone knew how to extract DNA and compare it to other samples. Instead, they turned to fingerprints. Dr. Kathy Taylor at the MEO asked the family if they had any letters from Mark. Luckily, they had. Mark's sister, in fact, had preserved the last letter she ever received from her brother. They were able to lift 2 fingerprints from the letter that was quickly approaching 40 years old. When compared to the prints that the detectives had been running through fingerprint databases since the discovery of Mark's body, they found a match. One of the prints from the letter was a definitive match to Mark Ashland. He'd finally been found. While there is, of course, renewed sadness when a cold case is solved, justice for the victim and peace for the family and friends can be a powerful antidote to that heartbreak. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. A playlist is going to pop up right now with more videos you'll love. See you guys next time.